For years, the Twisted Metal competition was run by Calypso. Time and time again, the earth was ravaged by its savage competitors. But as we know, there was always one competitor who would survive and always come back for more. A man more twisted than the Twisted Metal competition itself, Sweet Tooth. Having enjoyed his slaughter in many competitions, Sweet Tooth yearned to be the host of the Twisted Metal competition one day, and that day did come. For the first time, Calypso was not the host, becoming yet another competitor of the Twisted Metal competition, another victim of his own creation, as Sweet Tooth took his place. And if you thought Calypso was evil, you ain't seen nothing yet from Sweet Tooth. Things are about to change for the worse. You're tuning in to the JayBlast Network. Oh yeah, welcome to the next level. So check this out. It's 1999, and if you're a Twisted Metal fan, you may have been conflicted. After the release of Twisted Metal 3, well, you either hated the game or you thought it was decent. But one thing that wasn't divisive was the sales. Despite everything, Twisted Metal 3 sold more than the last game. Now, you can say it was the hype from the last game, but still, there was a demand for more Twisted Metal, and it would be delivered within just a year with the release of Twisted Metal 4. However, what fans didn't expect was that things were going to change completely. Now, let's just get it out of the way now. We all know Twisted Metal fans' favorite studio was behind this game. Of course, I'm talking about the late, great 989 studio. Horrible! Now hold on, just to gain the open studio. But to describe their environment back then, well, it was hectic. 989 Studio pretty much took on all of Sony's first party sports games, except Gran Turismo and Hot Shots Golf. Before, many of these games had different development teams under the Sony Interactive brand, but around 1998, many of these titles were pushed onto 989, which were technically former Sony Interactive Studio members, but before the 989 branding. Now, under the 989 brand, they were making games like NFL Game Day, NBA Shootout, the MLB series, and various other sports titles. There was a separate division for that, but there was also the main 99 division, and that's where Twisted Metal would come in. And while Twisted Metal wasn't made by 989 Studios at first, it was under the Sony Interactive brand, so it became another game they had to work on. Now, this was the 90s, people, and back then, there weren't many big development studios like there are today. So when you put all of these games onto one studio, well, you end up having to take shortcuts somewhere, and unfortunately, Twisted Metal was one of those shortcuts. Oh, and a couple other games like Cool Borders took a dive in quality. But you gotta understand, they had to rework someone else's work and make their own. And that's why Twisted Metal 3 had its issues, and something like NFL Game Day just kept improving with each game. And I know some of you are gonna say, well, why does that matter, Jay? They released a shit product and fans had to suffer for it. Well, this context matters because they were able to build off of that work now, and it's because of that their sequels had got better. And that's where we get into today's game, Twisted Metal 4. And I know some of you may have already raised your eyebrows because I call it an improvement, and because, well...
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
Yeah, the game isn't showing itself off well with these CGI cutscenes, especially with these Munchkin bros. Bro, where did Sweet Tooth get these guys from? Who the fuck are these people? I'm gonna hold myself back from roasting all the cutscenes. But the thing is, Twisted Metal 4 was an improvement from 3. And that was because 989 took what they had worked on and completely changed the series' identity to what they wanted. And I know that sounds bad. And in some aspects, it definitely is. But hey, if you can't make what worked before, then don't bother making it at all. Make something that you can commit to. But the problem were the players were gonna have to commit to it too. Because Twisted Metal 4 not only changed changed the tone of the series, but changed all of the characters, the way the levels are, and even the host of the tournament, who is now Sweet Tooth instead of Calypso, which is a great idea. Now that's something specific that you can do to shake up the franchise. And despite all of the work they had to do on other games, I feel as though 989 Studio delivered on their vision here. However, regardless of the quality, what Twisted Metal fans and even me myself had to get over was this change in the game's identity. And that, my friends, is what is going to make you like this game or hate this game. Look, I'm gonna just say it. I kind of like this game. But in saying that, was it a good Twisted Metal game or just a slight improvement? Hi, my name is Jay, and you're tuning into the JayBlast Network as we crash to the competition again to see what the hell 989 Studios were cooking with Twisted Metal 4. The first major improvement from the last game is the gameplay, and thank God they fixed this. Now, it ain't no Twisted Metal 2, but this is much better. Cars are much faster, and you can almost turn on a dime again. You no longer have to worry about your car flipping over and over at the slightest bump. Though I had run into a lot of collision glitches where I got stuck in the wall or kind of stuck in the ground for a little bit, but it's better than being flipped over intentionally by design. And even if you do flip over, you just get right back up. The movement of the cars alone just make the game feel better, and I can enjoy playing this game for a bit. The weapons have changed a bit too. They've added new weapons like the Merv that launched missiles into the sky to rain down terror on your opponents. Now, there are different versions of this, like stronger version in the auto lob, and no matter which version you get, this weapon kicks ass. And it's one of my favorite new additions to the game. It just obliterates whatever's in front of you, even yourself sometimes, if you get hit by it. There's also a proximity mine, which works as the mine attack that you had in 2, except now it's a separate weapon. And the freeze remote bomb, which freezes anyone who gets hit by it. The rest of the standard weapons from the last game return too, but the stages no longer have unique weapons to them. The levels do still have some unique properties though, and I'll go into detail on that later in the level section. There are less input moves than before, but they kept the good ones like the freeze, and the shield has finally come back, baby. Hell yeah. I don't know why they took it away from us. There are also 2 new ones they added, like the hyperspace and the massive attack. The massive attack uses nearly all of your weapon energy in one go to send out a massive attack at the opponent, and the hyperspace teleports you to a random location, which is good for when you're getting cornered by enemies or falling off a platform, making it a great defensive mechanic. Having this along with the shield and the invincibility makes the game a much more strategic experience, as with these tools I try to focus more on evasion so that I can stay alive longer, and it's honestly such a game changer, especially when you're about to fall off and die and you can just keep using hyperspace and maybe even lead people to their deaths too and escape at the last minute. It's one of my favorite input moves in the series. It's like, seriously, we could have used this back in New York or Antarctica back in the day. I think the only problem is that everyone, including you, still takes forever to kill. So it's not like you are desperate to use these things all the time. But with the improvements, they just make the game feel better than Twisted Metal 3, even though it still has some of the caveats from that game. And honestly, for 989 Studios, that's just enough to get by. This is where the game is going to begin to lose fans, and it's where the identity of Twisted Metal begins to be played with yet again. Twisted Metal 4 went on its own route in everything outside of the gameplay. The characters here are nearly all original, and if they aren't, then they've changed completely. The problem is, I would say that not only does nobody know these characters outside looking at the Wikipedia page, but I don't think a lot of people really care about these characters. I mean, seriously, can you name one of these characters without looking at the Wikipedia page? No? Of course you can. But let's get the good out of the way first, starting with Pizza Boy, the pizza delivery man. Yeah, there ain't much to him outside of that, but I'm biased. Pizza's my favorite food, so pizza drivers are respected over here. And he's voiced by Ryan Jumpman, aka the voice of Sonic in the Dreamcast era, aka the era where 2 of the greatest games of all time released. But I ain't glazing Sonic right now, so we'll continue on the video. And I ain't taking no arguments on that. Go argue with your mama. But to get to his gameplay, he kind of plays like Roadkill, who is a character I didn't play much in the original, but he was really good too. I liked him too. And his special is the pizza cutters, which track better than Roadkill's weapon. Like, these things even go behind you to get someone making him a good hit and run character. And he does some decent damage too. His only issue is how long it takes for his special to recharge, which is kind of a problem with many characters in this game. Specials take longer than ever before, and I don't know why. And it's character dependent too, and it especially gets annoying with how long the match can go on. Next is Quattro. Vegeta? No. This is a RoboCop / Full War wannabe. It is actually a planetary bounty hunter looking to arrest Sweet Tooth. This guy is Axel's replacement, and he's one of my favorites to use because of it. He's basically a faster Axel with less of his hitbox, and you still have that big body that Axel has, just in a more horizontal format than a more vertical format. And also futuristic. Meter Maid, the new outlaw. Of course, the biggest thing about her is her assets, which is definitely overcompensating for her tiny ass car. She has a surprise to get Sweet Tooth, and Lord knows what that surprise can be. She's alright. It's just a smaller outlaw with the lightning grab special, and it's really her design that the devs wanted you to focus on, but in this art style, yeah honey, you ain't no Laura Croft, sweetheart. The Joneses are probably the funniest gag characters in the entire series, being one of the happy family in a minivan just trying to get an RV to go on vacation. It's so bizarre in a world like this, but really they are just a regular ass family with no twist, no evil motives, just a regular good Samaritan family. And it also makes it messed up when you kill them, because you blowing them up means you also kill the children inside as well, which is pretty crazy even for Twisted Metal standards. I mean, I guess Calypso probably killed children secondhand with his competition, but we never see them die on screen. We just see the car explode, where it's still implied that they all died, which is also crazy because especially in the 90s, the rating systems let that slide. Maybe they didn't think about it that much. Other than that, they aren't anything special. They shoot 3 missiles out for their special, which is Warthog's original ability previously, but a version of Warthog's in the game already, so they had to change things up. Truly a bizarre combination of characters. The last new character I'll give some props to is Trash Man. He is the Mr. Slam stand-in, which if you watch my video on Twisted Metal 2, you know I despise that character with a burning passion of 1,000 souls. This guy, though, is much better. He wants to cover the world in trash, so at least he knows what he is, a garbage man and a garbage person. But the main reason I cut him some slack is because you can do this. And he's just more taking than Mr. Slam. That's a bonus too. There are 2 returning characters, being General Warthog and Captain Grimm. Yeah, we'll get to him in a bit. General Warthog is pretty much Warthog with a bigger tank and landmines for his weapons. I never play him, so I don't have much to say about him, but he's here. Grimm, on the other hand, what did they do to you, bro? Why is he Patchy the Pirate? Wait, that came out that year. Let's try to find another roast that's more. Yeah, here it is. You should have stayed in Neverland, Captain Hook. Was that reference too old? Well, the gimmick is too. I mean, how do you go from the Grim Reaper to a generic pirate? He even lost his skull special too, now having a cannonball, and he lost his bike for a ship hop rod? Yet, no. I'd rather be stuffed in Davy Jones' locker than play as this character. Alright, so there were some decent characters and some returning characters, but now we're about to get into the trash that 989 cooked up. Orbital is probably the least offensive of the set and actually has a twisted tail, as a two-faced James Bond-esque character wanted to restore his face back to normal after he got messed up during a mission. The reason why he is on the lower end for me though is because of his special. Orbiter has this black hole-esque orb that sucks opponents in only to freeze them, and that's it. And that's something that I can do with an input. I need some damage out of these weapons. Like, you couldn't have an explosion or something happen afterwards. I'm not trying to live in a winter wonderland. He's also supposed to be like a Spectre replacement, but at least Spectre did damage, even if it was just a little. And now we've hit rock bottom, literally. Google Eyes over here, or Goggly Eyes, I don't care how to pronounce his name, is a pest exterminator who sprays toxic pesticides from his van, which is just like Thumper, but more slow, and dude looks ugly as hell in a slower vehicle. He should probably be squashed like the bugs he tries to kill. And then you got Mr. Lucky Charms over here, Microblast, who's a micro leprechaun and can shoot a blast alright. Yeah, these tiny ass blasts, I mean, it might as well be a normal missile. You get a lot of these at first and they recharge fast, but he faces the same problem that Orbital has, where his weapon is not that useful compared to the counterparts that he can pick up. And then we probably arrive at the worst character, the Drag Queen. Ooh boy, we're gonna have some issues with this. The joke wasn't that funny back then, and it definitely isn't funny now that we see that it's taking up a character slot, and they took over the role of Thumper. And honestly, I'd rather have him back than the drag queen. And I get there's a double-sided joke here. It's the drag queen, she's in a drag race car, but damn, this is a prime example why people hate this roster. I want y'all to tell me one person on this roster after I describe everything to you. Tell me one person that you know. Tell me their backstory. Tell me everything that I kind of told you or summarized for you without looking at the Wikipedia page. Hell, I bet some of you just forgot who some of these characters were, and I just went over them. That's a failure of 989 Studios. They just could not make any real, memorable characters with memorable stories, memorable endings. They couldn't do none of that, even when it was time to make their own identity for the franchise. And then the ones that are memorable just kind of put different tropes together, and you're supposed to like them because of it. I mean, a leprechaun and Two-Face? Really? That's all you got? And while some of the characters are able to keep some of that twisted identity that came from the previous games, I just think it all falls flats in the end, because a lot of them just end up being stereotype stand-in and nothing else beyond that, which is why people forget about them. You know, they're not like a Axel or something unique that could have came from Twisted Metal. They just kind of put a bunch of tropes in and hoped you guys liked it. I mean, the only one I would say that stands out are the Joneses. You know, that's something that's kind of unique to Twisted Metal. It subverts every other crazy character they've added in the series, but that's the only thing about it, is the subversion. It's not really the characters themselves, right? But that was 989's characters, and there are two characters in the game that everyone remembers, aka the main events of the game. Of course, making his first and only playable appearance, sadly, we have Calypso, seeking revenge on Sweet Tooth for taking his competition away from him. And how will he achieve this? He no longer has his powers. So what will he do? He's gonna shoot a freaking nuke. That's what he's gonna do. Whoa! Hell yeah, Calypso did not come to play. He's taking names, man. The only problem I have is aiming the nuke, because if you detonate too early or too close, it's gonna mess you up real bad. Also, he has a slow truck, being a nuke mobile, which is great for his own power, but bad for traversal and movement. It doesn't matter though, because with nukes at his disposal, Calypso aims to eviscerate the competition. Now, I saved the best for last. This guy almost makes all the terrible choices for the roster null and void. He writes the songs. Rob Zombie. The world isn't ready to hear the wails and war cries of a dead man's soul. Now, this makes sense because Rob Zombie's music was in Twisted Metal 3, but now he's here in the flesh, and he stole Mr. Grimm's Skeleton Blast move and made it better, tormenting the poor drivers who lay in his path in the back of his Dracula. He does what Orbital should have done and actually does damage with his zombie explosion. The only problem with him is that this is the only game he appears in within the Twisted Metal series. But honestly, that's okay, because he came here to save the roster. Everything I said is null and void because Rob Zombie is here. And if you're wondering why Rob Zombie is invincible here and has infinite weapons, well, it's because Rob Zombie is just built different. That is my GOAT. In all seriousness though, I feel like this is a major downgrade from the previous games, and outside of gameplay is probably the one thing that Twisted Metal 3 had over Twisted Metal 4. But you also gotta realize Twisted Metal 3 just took most of the previous characters from Twisted Metal 2 and already had Twisted Metal 2 to back up the characters before, so it's really fair to judge Twisted Metal 4 like that? I don't know. But I'd rather 989 make their own cast of misfits than butcher the previous characters that they did in Twisted Metal 3. Now, levels are a big upgrade this time, and I mean in some ways over Twisted Metal 2, but there are a few missteps. If there's one area that the game shines in, it's this. However, there is no overall theme this time around. Like, you aren't traveling the world, you're kind of just thrown into random ass areas. The first one is the construction yard, and what you're going to notice is that the map is huge. All these maps are huge. However, unlike the last game, the map has things in it, and it isn't just a bunch of flat areas. The construction yard is split into 4 different small sections, each with their own elevation, and in there can be teleported to with these portals all across the map. There are a lot of portals in these games, some of them leading you to death traps. On top of all that, there's this crane that you can control and pick opponents up in and throw them into the death traps and kill them. And just like that, the first impression of the game has not only elevated itself above Twisted Metal 3, but truly innovated on what was there in Twisted Metal 2. The better character gameplay than 3, the better controls. The roster may need some work itself, but my point is 9 989 took what they should have learned from Twisted Metal 2 and 3 and made their own efficient product. And there are a few problems here. Like I said before, the matches last way too long. Not only because of these health bars, but also because of how big the maps are. But at least it's not with spamming opponents. I rather deal with this than we had before. Another thing that happens is now there's a boss fight in every single level. This one being the Crusher. Now they ain't the bosses of before. They're pretty easy to fight, but after such a long match, you wish it could just end and then go to the next level. Next is Neon City. Another banger level. 2 back-to-back from 989? Man, they're really stepping up here. But you know how it is with 989. You take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Those big gimmicks like the crane that you can move was only on that level, like for the entire game. There is no similar gimmick. Like they kind of blew their load early, huh? Neon City itself though is fire, whether it's blasting through the city streets or leaving landmines in the subway station or flying across the futuristic rooftops. There's always something elevating the action that occurs. And it's not like there aren't fun stage specific gimmicks. There is the train that goes around that can do some serious damage if you get dragged by it, but you can also blow it up with people being in front of it or on the side of it, blasting them away and destroying them. Then there's the secret area on the rooftops where you can blast this wall and be taken by a helicopter to a helipad area where there are secret weapons. Now imagine if you could stay on this helicopter for a bit and start shooting downwards into the streets, making it a gimmick similar to the crane and construction yard. That was a missed opportunity for this level. The boss here is the Moon Buggy, who just shoots electric balls at you. Hey man, keep your balls to yourself. 99 was really showing out with the stage, not just from a design standpoint, but from all the stuff that's in the level. I mean, this was pushing the PS1 definitely. I hope they can keep it up. And we're back in another step back with Road Rage. And I get they tried to replicate the map from Twisted Metal 1, you know, the freeway map, but at least there people would shoot at you and you'd run into your opponents faster. This map is so big and they knew it. Some of the roads have teleports to drop you back into the middle of the map just so you can be put back into the action. But then you still can't find anybody. Only one area is recognizable, and that's this underpass here. And there's a small secret area that connects 2 of the roads, but it doesn't really matter. You fight Super Dumper here, who is the first of the returning characters. And that's something I like. It builds off the fact that the roles have been reversed. We have a new roster, so most of the bosses are old vehicles. In terms of the new faces, it's still having to prove that they are just as good as the previous competitors. They're really not. But if you play as Calypso, it's also like them getting revenge on him for putting them through that competition in the first place. That's a really cool switcheroo. Next up is the bedroom. But
what are you doing? Go!
Hey bruh, we ain't doing that kind of stuff around here. No, this place takes a page out of Toy Story and has us fighting in a miniature size. Maps like this are always cool, like in the Toy Story 2 game itself on the PlayStation 1, but this really drives home the point of them just throwing random shit at the wall for levels. I mean, it's cool though. You get to go on dressers, play around with toys, you go under the bed, in the walls and stuff. They really do capitalize on this idea of it being a miniature size in the bedroom. But I also think some of these stages are starting to be connected to characters. I mean, the more you think about it, the Neon City has got to be Quattro's stage. And this is old Lucky Charms stage. I don't really got any ideas for the others. They kind of barely fit multiple people, but I bet they'd have something to match to them. This boss here is the RC car, and it's the last original boss of the game. I guess he's a rival to Lucky Charms, but just like him, he goes bye-bye fast too. I guess that size was compensating for nothing, huh? Then we get hit from a blast from the past, but this time it's complete ass. Amazonia 3000 BC. Probably supposed to be the same as the Amazonia from the second game, but there's no lava or really anything that makes it look like that besides it being in the Amazon apparently. It's just a big ass map with these misty areas where it's hard to find people. There are a couple of secret areas like finding a hidden temple in the wall or being teleported to the top of the temple in the center of the map. Both give you weapons. Both are so out of your way that not even the CPU is bothered to go get them. I mean, one of them doesn't even give you a good hint that something is behind the wall outside of you maybe wall glitching and seeing it yourself. You know, there could have been a good gimmick here with maybe having something activate in one of the temples that causes lava to rise in one of the ravines, you know, changing up some of the dynamics of the map. But instead, you're just stuck with this big, boring ass map. You know, I gotta mention something. You notice in some of the maps to be these toxic slime, but whenever you run over it, doesn't do damage. I don't know if they didn't program it or what, or it's just for aesthetic reasons, but it's pretty weird how they highlight that, yet it does nothing to you. At least here, the redeeming quality of this map is that my boy boy Axel returned here as a boss, as Super Axel. It's always good to see you again, buddy. Now we're really just going anywhere with the oil rig. But at the same time, it's one of the best maps in the game. The elevation in this level is incredible. Fighting races on all sections of the map, plus it makes the areas higher up on the map have multiple routes to reach them. And I mean, you go all over this oil rig. Honestly, they could have had to go to the control room and start messing with things to change the dynamics of the map a bit like in the first map, but they didn't do that here. There's also this one cheese area of the map that's on the helipad. Now you can sit on this thing and not only get health drop from the helicopter as well until you destroy it, but also freeze or shoot people who try to reach you from that ramp. And now thanks to the hyperspace, if you fall off, you can just recover from these falls, and your opponents can do the same thing, but if you manage to freeze someone when they fall, they can't teleport regardless of putting the input, and just like that, they're dead. You can use it to your advantage, especially against the double boss fight that appears in this game against Augur and Super Mr. Slam, which I take all the pleasure in the world cheesing Mr. Slam any chance I get. So that big bastard's gonna get what he deserves. I will give 989 Studios a bit of the benefit of the doubt here when it comes to the levels, as these maps are huge and the frame starts to drop on the PS1. They're clearly already pushing the PS1 to its limits, so maybe adding big gimmicks that I've been requesting or advising may have not been viable on the current hardware. And I also wanted to point out that the game does the same thing that Twisted Metal 3 does with holding back opponents, but at least they tell you how many you're going to have to fight from the start. So if you have to fight 6 opponents, it will say 6, but only 3 of them will be out at once. This helps you conserve your resources, but also makes the game easier than the other ones. Matter of fact, the whole game is just easier than the other ones at this point, which was a common trope going into later sequels of big PlayStation franchises. Now, the last 2 stages are based off of characters for sure, the boss characters to be specific, with Minions Maze being first up. I cannot stand this level, man. I hate mazes like this and games like this, and it all just gets confusing. There are some areas you can open up that makes it easier to get the parts of the maze. You can always find a way to the top to see where everything is, but why make something like this? It especially sucks for the bigger cars who slog through the map like molasses. And Minion, the boss of the map, because of the map and the game's being easier, is such a pushover too. This guy used to be a big threat, now he's jobbing from his own shitty level. A damn shame, man. The final area of the game is the Carnival, Sweet Tooth's Carnival. The last game was Calypso's Blimp, aka his base, and this Carnival is Sweet Tooth's base, and it's awesome. At first it seems like it's just a lot of empty space between the tents, but then you go inside the tents and blast the path to go inside the haunted house, which has its own paths, and then you get led to the roller coaster surrounding the map. Just watch out though, the roller coasters will come and kill you fast, but just like the train, you can kill it. Now I know this level plays a bit into Sweet Tooth being a clown, which is not really what Sweet Tooth wants to be. He kind of just appears like that, like he's not just a clown, but at least they made the level cool. They're gonna go in with that idea. And with all these areas in a condensed map, it makes the action take more of a center focus. The map is big like the rest too, but because of what's in it, you don't really feel like you're just driving aimlessly, and at some points it's just a cool set piece for the final level ran by Sweet Tooth, even if it's not part of his original character idea. And speaking of Sweet Tooth, this dude jumps up to the highest level for his boss fight. He has been relishing in doing this. My dude has nearly every single weapon in the game, including one that traps you in a black hole while hitting you with everything in the game. If you try to hyperspace out of it, he'll just track you down again with the weapons, and will track you down again and again no matter what you do. You cannot face him head on, like at all. He will completely destroy you. And honestly, this is how it should be. My boy waited his whole life to be the leader of the competition, and now he's showing why he deserved to be there all along. I mean, he's actually fighting unlike a certain character who was scared to fight before. The only way to stop Sweet Tooth is to use his map against him. Similar to Dark Tooth, it's best to lay landmines and have him follow you around the roller coaster. If you're on the ground, just go grab weapons and get the hell out of there. One blast and your health bar will melt like the ice caps are about to global warming. Don't play with my boy Sweet Tooth or it'll be game over in seconds. He is the main event. I also gotta give him props for actually fighting again and not using someone else. Calypso is on fraud watch for that. If you're able to survive his onslaught, you'll beat the game and get your ending, and if you played the last game, you're probably dreading what you're about to see. However, lucky for you, we've gone back to normal. Well, sort of. The dev realized that the endings were a twist on the wish that the driver made, and not just Calypso forcing the driver into one. Now, these aren't on the level of 2's endings at all, but there are some funny ones. I beat the game with PC Guy first, and his ending kinda sucked. Dude wanted a sweet ride, and he flew into space.
Instead of looking out for potholes, he should have been looking out for black holes!
Also, unfortunately, Sweet Tooth is not the person asking you about your wish. Instead, it's this midget who works for him. I swear seeing this area feels like a fever dream. Like, what the fuck is going on in the background? Like, Sweet Tooth just had all this crap happening around him, and this ugly CGI is not helping either. Sometimes I don't even hear the wish because of how much chaos is happening around. Like watching the episode of Xavier Renegade Angel. Hey, remember that classic? You get up at 3 a.m. after leaving on the TV, and now you're seeing all this random shit happening on the screen. Xavier is cooler though, especially than this. As I said though, there are some highlight endings, like the Joneses. This one is hilarious.
Brandon, for the sake of all that is sane! That's it! It's parked outside! Someone will see you out! Goodbye!
22 bottles of beer on the wall, 22 bottles of beer. Here's one of them bottles grabbed with a fall in. 21 bottles of beer on the wall, 21 bottles of beer on the wall, 21 bottles of beer. If one of them bottles
Now that felt like a classic Twisted Metal ending. Then there are some where Sweet Tooth loses, like Quattro just calls in a squad to capture Sweet Tooth off the cup.
A bounty hunter? Tacky, Quattro. Really tacky. Not this time, Quattro. But thanks for playing.
Or the Minute Maid, who has the surprise for Sweet Tooth, and it's just giving him a parking ticket and making him go to driver school. I guess that was a version of her doing something le freaky or whatever, but still lame.
Tooth can choose to do community service and wipe his record clean. This service will only take about a couple of minutes of his precious time.
We are sorry to inform you that we here at the Twisted Metal Tournament do not accept, condone, or tolerate any couple of minutes of community service is indeed fair conduct, and that option will be exercised thoroughly. Someone will see you out. Bye!
Hiya, kids. I'm here taking some time off from chasing bad guys to tell you about some safety tips you can use around your house and the streets to help you stay healthy and smiling. Let's start with your house.
And then you have Calypso, who fights Sweet Tooth to get his position back, and it ends.
The competition and the ring stay with Sweet Tooth. Wish for something else.
You forget the rules of the competition. Anything I desire is the prize. I won, and I desire the ring. Hand it over. It's mine! It's all mine! You can't handle this, Sweet Tooth. Oh, beautiful ring.
Stop! Stop! You'll destroy us all! The souls are escaping!
Oh damn, that's metal as fuck. But the perfect way to end the series, having both incarnations of chaos eliminate each other. Except you don't want the series to end after this, you want to get Twisted Metal Black. The last ending I want to highlight though is my man Rob Zombie's ending. It's just a promo for his music, but the start of it is so cold. Even Sweet Tooth and his munchkins fuck with Rob Zombie.
Mr. Zombie, you've just won
the Twisted Metal Tournament. With skills unmatched by any contestants, with fiery power unparalleled by any other being,
and with a fierce, calculating rage unseen by most mortals,
our master, Mr. Zombie, has vanquished his enemies with
pleasure and ease. Mr. Zombie will now
get one wish by the
sweet and gentle
grace of your
Master Sweet Tooth. What
is our
wish?
Our wish is to let this world hear the wails and war cries of a dead man's soul.
So be it.
completely badass, man. While these endings are a return to form, they definitely still lack the chilling twist of 2's or even 1's endings. Still better than what 989 did last time though, like way better. If there was one more area that 989 excelled in, it was the extras for this game, because this is better than the previous games. First off, every single boss is playable. All the classic drivers that return, even Sweet Tooth, are playable both in tournament mode and deathmatch mode. Feels good to play as my boy Axel again without those terrible physics. Then there are 8 more maps, though they're only accessible in tournament mode and they all look like Tron levels or test levels. I don't know if they ran out of memory on a disc or just wanted to add these or what, but at least it's here. Each one of these stages has a gimmick, like this one with falling platforms that you can break. The colors of the tiles in the stages mean something too. Blue is safe ground, red is destructible, green is sludge, which again doesn't really do nothing, and yellow is like a bumper. Each map will focus on these colors and serve for some fun gimmicks in the multiplayer. The biggest hurdle to get over though is the way it looks. It could have at least had a different background even with the Tron-esque platforms. It would have made it more appealing to look at. This just feels like a test environment. But at the same time, just having this additional content is much more than other Twisted Metal games. I mean, 3's additional content was garbage flat areas, and 2's were locked behind the multiplayer with the most unique map being one from Jet Moto, and the rest being returning levels. I'm just saying, the bar wasn't that high before, but perhaps the coolest feature of the game is the Create a Card feature. Here you can customize your own card from the 3 body types and pick a special move. You can even change the design a bit and change the colors. There aren't many options available to you though, but for a PS1 in 1999, this was awesome. You can even play with this in the tournament mode, though the ending you receive is...
You've effortlessly defeated your rivals in our Twisted Metal tournament. With Sweet Tooth's good graces and permission, we offer you one wish for your heroic and triumphant deeds. Your wish has been granted, driver! Someone will see you out. Goodbye!
Yeah, you don't even get the wish at all. Well, at least it's better than no cutscene. The sad part about this cutscene though is that all of the extra characters have this ending, including Sweet Tooth himself. Like, they really couldn't give a real ending to my boy. That's just lame. Endings aside, all this extra content, especially compared to the previous game, is such a great thing, and all of it is unlocked just by beating the game once. You don't need a stupid passcode anymore, though you can still use it, and use it for cheats like this God mode cheat and limited weapons, which also allows you to stack weapons on top of each other and go flying and break the game like this. Oh yeah. The last thing I want to mention is the soundtrack. Once again, it's all licensed music, but you get some remixes from Rob Zombie, including an original remix of Super Beast and Minion Stage that sounds incredible, along with some other artists like 1 Minute Silence and White Zombie, and they even got Cypress Hill on the soundtrack for the Road Rage level. Man, they went all in on this soundtrack. It just sucks you can't hear it unless you play the game, because I'm not playing it. But at least 989 went out of their way to make you want to play this game. And look, I know it ain't perfect, but at least there's so much content here that you can spend a longer time just exploring everything that you have than in the previous games. And that's something that can be appreciated. At Twisted Metal 4's release, the reception was much better than 3's, but the damage was done with 3. For those Twisted Metal fans had already wrote off the game because of 989's involvement, and it's easy to clown on him for pushing a new cast of weirdos who's overall diverting from the style of Twisted Metal 1 and 2 with his presentation. However, if you look past that, you'll come to realize 989 Studios redeemed themselves by making Twisted Metal into their own thing, their own messed up 989 version of it, and committing to it. I won't say I'm a fan of the new characters or the story or the god-awful CGI with Sweet Tooth's munchkins, but the ideas here can be strong. Having Sweet Tooth take over the competition is an excellent role reversal. Giving levels a special mechanic unique to them is great. However, the game falters by not going in as much on that idea as it should have, like having only one level really capitalize on it. And I don't think that's due to the incompetence, rather due to the high workload that 989 had during the time. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, but when you're handling that many projects projects at once all in a year, something had to cut somewhere. You know, I didn't even mention games like Siphon Filter or the fact that they made Jet Moto 3, which completely slipped my mind until very late into this production. But yeah, that was part of the list of games that they had to work on at the time. That's a lot for one studio. Yet despite it all, 989 managed to deliver a fun Twisted Metal with the most content out of any of them. All of that content is not always going to hit the mark, but it's commendable. And I know a lot of you might be ready to scream about the integrity of the franchise, but I'm honestly not that mad about that, considering that it got right back on track with the next game. You know, I just want to see this as 989's era, and Twisted Metal 3 was such a letdown because the game itself was trash. The levels were trash, the characters were ruined and were trash, and the controls were trash, and the physics were trash, and the entire game was just trash. At the end of the day, the only thing that pisses me off about Twisted Metal 4 is the theme of it compared to, okay, some of the characters suck as well, but for the negatives, there's also more positives. Like, okay, the new cast sucks, but we also got some of the best old cast members here as extra content, except Mr. Slam. Yeah, not giving every map a big gimmick sucks, but most of the maps are designed in fun ways. I just can't stay mad at bad things, and I keep wanting to play this game and explore it. It feels like 989 finally hit its stride with the franchise here, and I put it near Twisted Metal 2 in quality, at least for the PlayStation 1 entries of these games. I had nearly as much fun as that game, but Twisted Metal 2 was cooler, and it had the best characters, and the best stories, and the better maps. It'll always be on the top of the PS1 games, but Twisted Metal 4 will be right next to it for me. Well, not exactly right next to it, a little bit down, but it will be the next up. Now, for the future of this franchise, this was 989's last hurrah, and after this year, they would become Sony's strictly sports-based studio. Twisted Metal will return to the hands of its original creators, and they would not only deem the games non-canon, but also act like they don't exist. To this day, Sony hasn't re-released these games or really ever acknowledged them. The only thing we get is some of the characters from 3 and 4 appearing in the new show. In most perspectives of the franchise, you will see people dog on both of these games, and when it comes to 3, I believe it deserves everything, but 4, I think it's a bad rep. Also, I'm pretty sure they just don't release these games because of the licensed music in the game, and that's another thing that was gone. No more Rob Zombie after this, which sucks. He's stuck in this era of the franchise, but that's part of what makes this era special. Look, I ain't gonna tell you that 989 were some secret gods of Twisted Metal design, but I'm gonna tell you that you should at least give Twisted Metal 4 a chance. I just see it as an interesting take on Twisted Metal, one that I'm glad we never got followed up on, but I think the gameplay and its ideas are enough to keep the game afloat. If you played 2 or Black, or even Head On, or even the PS3 game, you're probably not going to be that impressed, but I can tell you that you might have a good time and a good laugh looking at all that terrible ass CGI. With that being said, guys, this is the JayBlast Network signing out, and don't forget, you better believe, baby. Oh yeah, now we're talking.